Before we continue, I want to say one thing. This isn't a conclusion, and it isn't a payoff. It's a reflection on what happens when responsibility is carried long enough to change how you move through the world. Nothing is being asked of you here, and there's no pressure to take anything with you. If you want to sit with that kind of perspective, you're welcome to stay. At some point, responsibility stops feeling like something you're doing. It stops feeling like effort or discipline or something you have to remind yourself to uphold. It starts feeling like who you are. Not because it became easy, not because the weight disappeared, but because carrying it became integrated. I didn't notice when that shift started happening. There wasn't a moment, there wasn't a realization. It showed up quietly in small ways, in how I make decisions, and what I no longer debate, and what doesn't require negotiation anymore. Responsibility stopped feeling like something external, a set of rules or expectations or obligations. It became internal. And that changes the quality of everything. When responsibility is something you do, it requires constant energy. You have to push yourself, convince yourself, remind yourself why it matters. When responsibility becomes part of your identity, that friction drops. Not because you care less, but because there's nothing left to argue with. You don't wake up asking whether you're going to show up. You already know. That doesn't make life comfortable, but it makes it clean. I used to think that growth meant adding things like discipline, structure, habits, more systems, and some of that mattered. But what actually changed me wasn't what I added. It was what fell away. The internal debates, the justifications, the need to prove anything to myself or anyone else. Responsibility stopped being something I reached for and became something I stood inside. That's a subtle difference, but once you feel it, it's unmistakable. When responsibility is integrated, you don't experience it as pressure. You experience it as alignment. Things line up. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but coherently. Your actions make sense relative to who you are. Your decisions don't fracture you internally. Your energy isn't leaking in every direction. There's a steadiness that comes from that. Not confidence, not certainty, stability. I still make mistakes. I still misjudge things. I still carry weight imperfectly. But I no longer feel divided while doing it. That division was the exhausting part. Before, every responsibility came with an argument. And part of me wanted to carry it. Another part wanted relief. And another part wanted to escape. Now there's less noise. Not silence, just less resistance. Responsibility doesn't feel heroic when it's integrated. It feels ordinary. It shows up in routines, inconsistency, and doing the same things even when no one is around to watch. That's not glamorous, but it's real. And real things last. I've noticed that when responsibility becomes identity, you stop outsourcing your sense of direction. You don't look for permission, you don't wait for validation, and you don't need agreement. Not because you're closed off, but because you're no longer uncertain about who you are. That doesn't make you rigid. If anything, it makes you more flexible because your center is stable. You can listen without collapsing. You can adjust without losing yourself. And you can change your mind without feeling threatened. Responsibility, when it's integrated, doesn't trap you. It frees you from needing constant external structure. You don't need to be managed. You don't need to be pushed. You don't need to be motivated. You move because movement aligns with who you are. That's a very different experience from forcing yourself inward and forward. I used to associate responsibility with restriction, with limitation, with giving things up. And there's sacrifice involved. But what I didn't see early on was how much freedom comes from not being at war with yourself. When your values, your actions, and your identity align, There's less drag, less internal resistance. Life still has weight, but it doesn't feel chaotic. It feels directional. And that direction doesn't come from ambition. It comes from integrity, from being able to trust yourself to do what you said you would do, even when it's inconvenient. And that trust accumulates quietly, day by day, choice by choice, until one day you realize you're not trying to become someone anymore. You're just being consistent with who you already are. That's when responsibility stops feeling like a burden. Not because it's lighter, but because it fits. It matches the shape of you. I don't experience that as a rival. There's no sense of, now I'm done. It's more like standing on solid ground. Things still happen, challenges still show up, weight still exists. But I'm not slipping under it. I know where I'm standing. I know what I'm carrying. And I know that I'm capable of continuing to carry it. Not forever, not perfectly, just honestly. Responsibility doesn't give you answers. It gives you orientation. It doesn't tell you where you're going. It tells you where you are. And when that becomes part of your identity, there's nothing left to chase. No role to perform. No version of yourself to arrive at. Just the ongoing act of showing up in alignment with what you've already chosen. That's where I'm standing. That's what responsibility looks like for me now. And that's enough.